Hey everyone, we're very excited to be here today and to be part of this conversation. First of all, I would like to thank AIA for giving us this opportunity to present our research to you guys today. And I want to thank everyone who's taken their time to be here. My name is Raquel Guzman Lleara. I grew up in the Dominican Republic and moved to the United States for college in Savannah, Georgia. Shortly after I graduated, I moved to Chicago to start my career in architecture. I've now been an architect at Smith Group for about 7 years. I work in several studios in architecture and interior architecture, and one of them being the Workplace Studios, where I do projects starting from strategy and pre-design all the way through construction. One of my first projects in Workplace was the design of our very own office, which was a great exposure into what Workplace needs. Needless to say, it was very, very interesting to have your own coworkers act as your clients and your users. I got a firsthand understanding of what worked and what didn't in the design process and in the office environment. After that, I've worked on several workplace projects across Chicago and other states. From a very young age, I've been driven to help people grow and find opportunities to help them grow. So I started working in professional environment. I searched for opportunities where I could do this. Shortly after I started at Smith Group, I became a lead in our emerging professionals group in the office, where we work to help employees with their professional development and growth. I also became one of the founding leaders of the JEDI committee, which we call the Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion group, because I have a firm belief that both of these groups, JEDI and emerging professionals, are very intrinsic to make a great office, have a good culture, and develop future leaders in the workplace. Based on my experience from being in these roles in our office and being able to support people who may not have had this support before, I realized I wanted to make an impact in the larger community. Therefore, about 1.5 years ago, I became a founding member of an organization called Arquitina, which is a professional leadership and licensure initiative to raise the 1% of licensed Latina architects in the US. It's based on mentorship, networking, and creating meaningful connections to help the growth of Latinas in the profession. Most recently, I became the co-chair of YAF, the Young Architects Forum in AIA, where we work with professionals around the city to provide opportunities for growth and networking. As I continue my career, I want to be able to keep helping these professionals grow globally. With that said, pass it on to you, Molly.
Thanks, Raquel. Hello, everyone. Thank you again for attending our session. We're very excited to have you here. My name is Molly Rademacher. I am a licensed architect, and I'm also currently pursuing my interior design registration. I am also an architect and designer at Smith Group Chicago, where I've been for about 3.5 years. Before Smith Group, I studied and received my Master of Architecture from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. And before that, I studied interior design and studio art at Adrian College, which is in Southeast Michigan. Since being at Smith Group, I've worked primarily in workplace, but have also dabbled in higher ed and science and technology as well, working on projects from survey through construction, doing both interior design and architecture. Like Raquel, I have served many different leadership roles in the office, including being on our Toastmasters board, serving on the social committee, and serving on the JEDI committee as well. I have been a leader for a lot of my life, being involved with different student councils and things through elementary, middle school, and high school, and serving as class president in college. I started formally working with emerging professionals in the profession of architecture in the summer of 2017 as the AIA Illinois student director. While my primary role was to advocate for AIAS chapters throughout the state, I also helped develop the first AIA Aspire Student Leadership Conference, and I co-founded the AIA Illinois Emerging Professionals Network. And since I have started a lot of programs that help connect emerging professionals, provide resources, and help create a network across the state. Over the past 2 years, I've had the opportunity to serve as the AIA Illinois Regional Associate Director, representing associate members across Illinois at both the state and national levels. These roles have placed me in many conversations with EPs discussing what they are looking for, what they're struggling with, and what has been successful for them so far in their career. And I forgot to move slides, so. Today, Raquel and I are going to be discussing topics about how employers can help create the future of work by fostering mentorship, providing flexibility, and promoting diversity in their workspace, whether that be virtual, physical, or a combination of the two. Before we get into the topic, however, I want to define a couple key phrases and give you a framework of how we've developed this presentation. So first, we have already thrown out emerging professional a few times in our introductions, but what exactly does that mean? For our purpose, we are going to use the newly adopted AIA definition that the Center for Emerging Professionals at AIA National uses. And that is that emerging professionals, or EPs, are professionals who've completed their academic career up to the point of licensure or who have been in the profession for about 10 years after their studies. So whatever comes second, that kind of defines you as an emerging professional. In preparation for today's discussion, we hosted a workshop as part of the AIA Illinois Emerging Professionals Summit in September, discussing the 3 topics that we will be going over today, as well as conducted an anonymous survey with emerging professionals from across the country. In addition, we will both be incorporating some of the research that we have done as workplace designers and as emerging professionals and emerging leaders, so our experience in talking with emerging professionals in our day-to-day roles. And I'm going to turn it back over to Raquel for her to talk to you about mentorship.
Thank you, Molly. So one thing we know today is that we are not going to go back to pre-pandemic, but we also know that we're not staying where we are right now. So what does our future look like? We know we will need to adapt to a new culture and to be able to easily make changes. There will be a constant learning and relearning. And in order to attract and retain emerging professionals, it is important that we understand these changes and what to do toward making them happen. A big part of these changes and creating better workplace environment is to integrate, like Molly said, mentorship, flexibility, and diversity. So I'll first talk a little bit about mentorship. Next slide, Molly. Thank you. Virtual or remote work has been an adjustment for everyone, and its effect on our professional relationships has been very significant, as important as our daily tasks. For emerging professionals, the lack of mentorship and all the casual conversations we used to have poses a considerable challenge. How can we learn best practices to succeed in our careers when we're working alone from home, when we don't get that conversation anymore? How can we build the personal relationships that are very critical for development? Next slide. So before diving into our findings, we wanted to understand what is mentorship and what are the types of mentorship. So mentoring at work is a partnership between colleagues for the purpose of learning and growth. It is the guidance, the influence, or the direction given by a person. In an organizational setting, a mentor will influence the personal professional growth of a mentee. Mentorship is basically investing in the future. It has a ripple effect, since if you do it right once, this person will grow and learn and be able to do this by themselves. At the same time, this person will then mentor others. It's like a paid forward movement. Time invested at the beginning is time saved in the future. Salary and benefit might bring a person in our doors, in our companies, but they're not going to be enough to keep them there. Culture and mentorship and all these other things we're talking about today are things that are going to keep the employees in our companies. Next slide. So it should be noted that there are several types of mentorship that we can talk about today. This doesn't mean that each one is a different person in your life. It can be that one person serves all these purposes, or it could be you have 20 people across your lives that become your mentors. So one of the first mentorship we talk about at work is the peer mentor. This is the person that for a new employee, someone that introduces the mentee to the organizational culture of the company, shows them the rope, shows them who they could talk to, what programs they could be using, and all those sorts of things. Then we have what we call a career mentor. This is where the mentor serves as a coach, whether it's someone assigned formally by the company or someone you just naturally find. And this is an internal advocate for the mentee. It's someone who helps them meet their professional goals, who helps them get the projects they need to get to develop professionally. And last, we have what we call the life mentor. This is basically the person that helps you integrate all of those professional goals and your professional development with your larger life journey, the person that helps you work-life balance. Next slide. There's several benefits of mentorship. We can talk about it all day long, but I'm going to talk a little bit about 5 of them. First, when you have a good mentorship program in the office, there's bigger employee retention because this helps create a positive work environment and a higher level of employee satisfaction, which will lead to retention. It's also very good on leadership development. Mentees will always experience a faster progression in their growth and in their knowledge if someone's guiding them. And then this will deepen their sense of purpose in the company. It'll strengthen their leadership position. And that's how you start creating all the future leaders. It also helps develop skills. Yes, we know that a mentor will be teaching mentees several skills, but what we might not be realizing is that mentees also teach mentors a lot of skills. All this happens through knowledge sharing. For instance, let's say a younger mentee might be talking to their mentor and there's a program that the mentor doesn't know how to use. The mentee might be teaching them how to do this. It helps a lot with self-confidence. When you have someone advocating for you in a company, you feel like you belong. You feel like what you are doing there is the correct thing, and it makes you want to stay there, and it makes you very confident. And lastly, mentorship helps with diversity. As mentioned before, diversity is one of the key things we think are very important for employee retention. So many mentorship programs will help promote diversity in leadership by encouraging people to share their opinions, share their knowledge, share their ideas, no matter who they are or what background they come from. So a very successful mentor program can attract and retain employees of all backgrounds. This quote that you see here to the right is one from one of our surveyors that kind of says mentorship should occur at all levels of staff and be encouraged and celebrated. Like I mentioned before, there's benefits for everyone across the company, not only the young staff. People can continually grow and learn no matter where they stand in life and in their careers. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned before, as an offset of the pandemic, many of us moved into the virtual platforms that cut us off from daily contact with our teams and our mentors. We lost the coffee talk, or how people say the water cooler talk, the seemingly casual conversations that we had with a coworker, with a mentor, with a boss. So incorporating mentorship opportunities in the virtual world became very crucial. Through our workshops and surveys that we conducted, we asked people what started working and what were the benefits on when you moved into this virtual world. And a couple of things came across. People mentioned they had more flexibility. When they meant time flexibility, right? It was very easy to pre-schedule one-on-one chats because people were online more, which might be a drawback, but people had the time to balance their work and their life and then connect with a mentor at some other point in the day. There was a more freedom to balance the work-life relationships. You can meet in different settings. Yes, before the pandemic, you could meet anywhere, but through the virtual world, we started realizing, wait, I can meet with my mentor online. I can actually go to a coffee shop near my house, or I can go into the office. So a lot of different settings started popping up. And finally, in the flexibility portion, people were not having the hassle of commuting to meet a mentor, so they could do it all online. With that came cross-communication. So now that we're all working from home in our computers, we're able to connect with people from other offices, even more so than we did before. You can connect inside of work, outside of work, and this creates a larger pool. So because we are not in an office, we don't have that limiting factor of geographic proximity. So you can basically expand your pool of people that you could make a match with, a mentor that you can meet based on your interests and on what you actually need. So you can meet someone that's working in a remote location. Right now I'm in Phoenix and Molly's in Chicago. We're talking here, something that we wouldn't be doing that much back then. And lastly, there's better exposure. So there used to be times where people were not able to attend meetings, young professionals, because the room was already full. So you didn't get to go to interviews, to preps, to client meetings, but now you can attend them because you can go virtually just to listen in. You can be a fly on the wall, you can take notes, but inherently that created more exposure to learning opportunities. Next slide. Seemingly so, virtual mentorship started having its benefits. So we actually wanted to ask what was lacking then while we were at home? What were the benefits of back when we were in the office? And these are four of the things that came up. One, people are missing the hands-on ability. I want to sketch with my hands, draw ideas. That's what we heard. I want to be able to take a trace paper and show something to my boss real quick or to my coworker. Some people are missing that face-to-face personal interaction that you don't get virtual because this feels a little more robotic when you're on the virtual. And people miss sharing resources, bringing a book to someone's desk to show them something for them to learn. Then we move into the chance encounters. I mentioned a little bit about the water cooler talk before. So those encounters that you would have when you would go get a coffee, lunch break, or you would bump into someone in the hallway in the office and they would ask you, what are you working on? And then inherently this person might give you a great idea or might teach you something new that you don't get nowadays because you would have to call this person to ask them. Then some people are missing the mentor adjacency. This is an interesting one because we've heard it both from mentee and mentors. Not being able to be seated next to the person you're mentoring can be hard, because when you're live and sitting next to the person, you can see what they're doing. You can be like, hey, there's a faster, better way to do this. Or maybe the mentee can ask, am I doing this correctly? Online, you have to actually schedule a meeting to do this. So there's not that natural flow of mentorship occurring. And lastly, the impromptu conversations that you can have on Teams. Overhearing conversation that other team members might be having. For instance, Molly might be on a project with me and she would ask the project manager something. If we're in the office, I can quickly turn and listen to what he has to say about it, which in turn leads me to learning more about something. Those conversations are being lost nowadays. And another part of impromptu conversations are the side conversations that you can have with client and contractors. So nowadays we meet with someone online to solve one issue, to solve a problem with the client or the contractor. Back then, when you were walking the site, you had so much more opportunity to be asking the contractor about all these things that you're seeing or all these things that you want to learn. Next slide, please. So we also asked all of our groups, what are some office initiatives toward mentorship that have happened recently? And the number we got, as you can see, was a little surprising. 90% of the people said that their offices weren't doing anything. 10% said that they had some sort of mentorship program. By all means, we understand that an office doesn't need a formal mentorship program to foster mentorship, but the shift that has happened through the pandemics has created a lack of mentorship, and we can see it on these numbers. So we want to help raise that number. We want to understand how to integrate what we learned is working virtually and in the office, and how a hybrid movement can help moving forward. Next slide. With everything we learned, we asked, how can mentorship be improved? And we got a wide array of responses, and these are just some of them. But it was people craving having formal pairings, for instance. We know that mentorship can happen naturally, but some sort of initiative in an office where you get paired with a mentor. When we got deeper into that conversation, people also said those that had formal pairings felt that their pairing was very arbitrary. So it's going a step forward in making a conscious decision of who has to be a mentor and a mentee. Maybe it's a survey, maybe it's analyzing the needs of each person, mentor and mentee. A lot of people were craving groups and mixed pairings. We love having one-on-one mentors, but some people wanted to have a bigger range, a bigger meeting where they could meet different people. There's a need for training and education on how to be a mentor. Yes, some people are inherently very natural mentors, but others that want to help want to know how to do it better. They also want to have a guide for activities, things that you can do. And this is not only for one-on-one mentorship activities. This could be for an emerging professionals group in a whole office. What kind of activities develop professional growth? Some people ask for opportunities beyond projects and encourage networking outside of the office. What does this mean? Some emerging professionals feel that they can't attend these events if they're during office time because they're not billable. So it's shifting that mentality a little bit and being like, well, which events are actually going to help this person, and let's make it happen for them. Then the last two things are very important. If you're not getting mentorship, you need to seek it out. Sometimes we need to learn that we are advocates for our own selves, and we should go talk to a person. The people we work with are more than willing to help. So just talk to see who connects with you and who can help you develop in the future. Lastly is the hybrid program. Some of our offices, like Molly and mine, are gonna move in, and Sean's in here in the call, are gonna move into a hybrid world where we're gonna have to be in the office a couple of days and at home a couple of days. What this means is doing a conscious effort of coordinating when people need to be in the office, depending on teamwork or projects, or when you can achieve those personal growth days in the office. So we understand that mentorship can happen in many different ways, whether formal or informal, but most importantly, we know mentorship is a crucial aspect of learning and experience. It will help professional growth and ultimately create a very fulfilled employee, will help the company grow, and of course, stay in the company. Now to you, Molly. You're muted.
As we look to define what the new workplace looks like moving forward, we have heard one word repeatedly tossed around, and that's flexibility. Over the course of the pandemic, many have grown accustomed to getting to spend more time with their family, connecting in the communities that they live in, and maybe getting a load of laundry done during their workday. The pandemic has taught us many things, but definitely that there are benefits to choosing where you work. Many studies, including those conducted by Steelcase and the University of Chicago's Booth School of Business, have shown that individuals are more productive working from home. However, as design professionals, we all understand the need to work together in person. So what does the workplace look like in the future, and what do individuals need in order for that workplace to be what they need when they do decide to come into the office? In an outreach survey of emerging professionals, which we've discussed, we found that only 37% of respondents are currently required to be in office, and that's one day or multiple days a week. Out of all the people we surveyed, only 16% are required to be in the office full time at this point. That being said, many did say that they're expecting their employer to change that scenario in the coming months as the pandemic subsides. When asked if there was anything they would want their management to know in terms of flexibility, many were emphatic that choosing where to work allows them to be more productive and helps promote their overall well-being. So what did our respondents define as the benefits from working from home? The first and most obvious, which Raquel touched on briefly, was focus time, having less distraction. The second was saving time and money, not needing to commute, not needing to buy lunch or grab coffee on your way into the office. The third is having real breaks, being able to shut off during those breaks and not feel like you're on, and improved mental health. And then the last is connection to family, especially for those with children, but also being able to connect with your community, walk around while it's still light outside, be able to know who your neighbors are. People found that a really big benefit from work from home. So many, if not all of us, have experienced these benefits, whether that be getting outside to take a run in the morning instead of driving to work, or cooking a healthy, well-balanced lunch instead of standing in line to grab a quick bite between meetings. And not all of these benefits are personally benefiting us. Some of them also are good for our work. Having the opportunity to write specifications without being interrupted by coworkers stopping by to say hello, or getting really focused and knocking off your to-do list before a deadline, being able to concentrate on the task at hand. Work from home isn't perfect by any means. We're not saying that it is. So we also asked our respondents to tell us what benefits they found from being in the office, whether that be during the pandemic or prior to. The biggest and least surprising was collaboration, finding teamwork and team building exercises energizing and keeping people motivated. The second is being social, having socialization and growing your network, whether that be inside the office or outside the office. This was especially true for young people who live by themselves. The third was having work-life separation. Studies are beginning to find that people are beginning to miss their commute, missing that shut off, that separation. And the last being the feeling part of the community of the firm and having a sense of firm culture. Overhearing other people on their team and across the office discuss projects, like Raquel mentioned, allows one to feel more connected to the culture of a firm, and not to mention gain knowledge of parts of projects that they may not get to personally experience until much later in their career. Being able to have desk conversations, mini charrettes throughout the workday also energizes individuals, gets them to think outside their own experience, and in turn makes projects more inclusive. Firm culture is important, and without it, many feel disconnected from their organization. And when you feel disconnected from your organization, you're not as loyal to it. One respondent of our survey stated, "Mentorship keeps people. Lack of flexibility loses people. Employees are noticing." This is clearly evident from the phenomenon happening now, coined the Great Resignation by Texas A&M Professor Anthony Klotz. People are resigning from their current positions in numbers that haven't been seen in years. This is due to 4 factors. The first being that people hadn't been resigning during the pandemic. As people were getting laid off, people who had a job stuck with it, even if they were wanting to make a change. So some of the numbers are being contributed to those people. The second is burnout. Many of us have felt burnout, or at least felt a blow to our mental health over the past year and a half. While some of this is due to the burden of a global pandemic and other social factors, evidence also supports that isolation from working from home, lack of perceived employer support, and even a lack of stimulation from not being able to talk to people on a daily basis has created a monotony and contributes to burnout. This is felt more so by women, according to McKinsey, because women are more likely to be given service roles within their household, like caring for a sick family member, taking over childcare responsibilities, or even being responsible for household tasks. As the pandemic continues and many people are keeping their children at home, more women are resigning as their male counterparts are making more. So this is making the wage gap really, really hard for women. The third is pandemic epiphanies. Anytime there's a global shift after a world war or a pandemic, people readjust their priorities. Watching the world stop and change almost instantaneously has led many of us to do this. Maybe focus on our physical well-being or mental well-being a little bit more and just shift our overall purpose. Employees are looking more at how their firms and organizations are supporting their communities, engaging in social causes, and expecting their people to contribute to the workplace at large. The last, and one that will become more and more prevalent as more offices go back, is the aversion to work full-time in the office. The workforce kept many industries afloat, from their sofa or their kitchen table or their dining room. Many did this with little financial support from their workplaces, and some even without the proper technology. Workers are looking for employers to now flex to fit their needs, as they did during most of 2020. If their workplace is not supporting their needs, they're going to look at other companies that will. So, how do you prevent your emerging professionals from leaving your company, and how do you show them support? The first is be flexible. Easier said than done, but it may seem daunting to set a policy that everyone is happy with, and it's pretty much impossible. But ask your employees what they're looking for and the reason behind why they have that idea. Take that information and develop your work from home, hybrid, or in-person strategies, and be really intentional about it. Communicate the reasons why you're setting those expectations with your employees, and leave room for your policy to change. Remember how I mentioned earlier that emerging professionals are still expecting their work policy to shift? It is okay to adjust your policy as you figure out what works for your firm and the culture and your team. Having an open line of communication, doing your best to support your employees in a way that benefit everyone, and being open to change will allow your firm to create a culture and environment which you are looking for. If your employees feel heard and supported, they are more likely to stay with you. If it is important, so why come into the office at all? If it is important for your organization to have people in it physically, really think about what the office serves and why people would come in if they can't do something at home. So does your team need a large area to collaborate and charrette? Make sure your office provides ample space for teams to do that. Is it important that your team feel connected? Have maybe some networking exercises over lunch that promote team building. Is it important for you to have good communication with your clients and consultants? Make sure your conference rooms, other areas in your workplace have proper technology. This is a big issue because even though we may be coming back into the office, our clients may not be coming into the office to have a meeting, or we may be working with teams that have spread out over the pandemic. Does your team have proper space? As all of us are on video chats, offices are becoming noisier, so it's even more important to have phone rooms like the one I'm sitting in that are soundproof and allow people to have that heads down space in between meetings if they need it. If your office provides an amenity for your staff that they don't get at home, they're more likely to come in and use it. Our workplace, whether it be physical or digital, will likely never be the same as a pre-pandemic one. In order to provide a space, a culture, a job which people are excited to be in, it is important to listen to their needs of your employees and remain flexible to make sure those needs are being met.
Thank you, Molly. Before I talk a little bit about diversity, as a reminder, you can ask questions in the chat and our great moderator, Sean Waddell, will make sure to ask them in the end. But also, if there's things you are doing in your office or that you wish you could see, put them in the chat because we're gonna take those for our research. This is ongoing. So now let's talk about diversity. So diversity, along with equality and inclusion, have always been very important topics, and they have very critical implications for communities, businesses, and people. And now the pandemic is shining a very new light on these issues, or a harsh light, let's put it that way. Social justice movements are pushing companies to think more deeply about the role in society. Next slide. So even before the pandemic began, progress on advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion was very slow. Historical challenges for diverse groups have only been exacerbated by the COVID-19 crisis, but this doesn't mean they weren't always there. The pandemic actually caused a very rapid shift in corporate values and social responsibility as workers struggled to deal with the fallout of the lockdowns and losing their jobs. So moving into hybrid workplaces has shifted priorities and is having a very huge effect on diversity. So next slide. So let's understand diversity a little bit. So diversity in the workplace means that a workplace is composed of employees with varying range of characteristics and experiences and backgrounds. Companies have realized that having diversity leads to diversity of thought and ideas, and it adds value to the business. Diversity can often be misconceived as solely multicultural matters, but there are also a lot of other people and backgrounds that apply to diversity. Next slide. So when diversity at work first became an organizational concern, it was mostly focused on demographic diversity, such as gender and race. And there were efforts, but in many ways, these efforts were lacking. People were putting pictures of a diverse person on their website and their pamphlets, and that's really not enough. They were having someone to be their token diverse person. Nowadays, organizations understand that there is more to diversity than demographic categories, such as, I'm gonna read all of this, race, ethnicity, gender, age, sexual orientation, physical abilities and disabilities, religion, political beliefs, education, socioeconomic background, geographical orientation, language, culture, military service, and others. So as you can see, diversity has a lot of different backgrounds, and they're all important, and some of them might at one point in time need a lot more attention. So this is a quote from one of our respondents in our surveys. Diversity is a purpose, but not really an action plan that has a clear agenda on how to become more diverse at all levels. It's easy to say that an office is diverse and add token members to the team, but for it to be sustainable, for it to be meaningful, it has to have deeper roots on how it's going to be achieved. So basically, having more diversity, equity, and inclusion is not a feat of a day or a short time. This is a long-term goal that has to be continually worked on. It has to be changed and it has to be adapted. It has to be a group effort. It's not one single person carrying everyone in their bags. People have to be willing to learn and educate themselves. Next slide. So the first question we asked in our workshops in the office was, how are your offices addressing diversity? And the room was silent. People didn't really know how to answer this, whether because they didn't understand what diversity really entails, their offices haven't addressed the conversation, or because in general, it is a tough conversation to have. So at that one moment, Molly and I realized that the topic of diversity would be one that would take a lot more research on our part. It would take a lot more time, and it's one that has many subtopics that need to be addressed. Some people did have some answers, which started loosening up the group and talking a little bit more. For instance, some of the answers said that their offices had a formal initiative, like an Office and Corporate Justice, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee, or that at staff meetings and national leadership meetings, people have these conversations. There's scholarship for minority women or minority architects. And some answers were as simple as, well, now I'm being given opportunities when there were limited opportunities before. Or someone said, now we're bringing everyone's ideas into projects. We have close coordination and we work as a team. So as you can see, diversity can be addressed at all levels in a company. Next slide, Molly. After these conversations, one other thing was clear. 3 things need to happen for offices to push forward diversity in the workplace. So to understand diversity, we need more education, more training, and more conversations. So when I say education, it's something that you can do yourself. Go to Google, get a book. It's a systematic system that proves of learning with a goal of acquiring knowledge. You just want to acquire knowledge, learn the facts and the concepts of what diversity means, something that you can do by yourself. Keep reading and keep educating yourself. Then there's training. There has to be some formal office training that can help develop the tools and the skills for people to be able to develop initiatives or to further diversify their workplace. And lastly, there's conversations. Let's not be afraid to talk about the subject. Have a casual conversation with a friend, with a coworker, make it firm-wide, make it office-wide, however you want to do, just start the conversation. Don't be afraid to deal with the subject. Next slide. I'll reiterate this with another quote from one of our respondents. Working to create diversity in our office requires constant work and full participation. Everyone has to be involved and continually working to find ways to hire diversity and support diversity in the office. Can't better say it. Next slide. So if what we said is not enough to understand the importance of having diversity in the workplace, there are some factual benefits to this. I'm gonna talk a little bit about them. So when you have a diverse workplace, you have a variety of perspectives. When you hire people from different backgrounds, different cultures, different nationalities, different ages, all that I mentioned before, you bring a fresh array of perspectives into the table. So it'll lead to benefits like more creativity in a project, better problem solving, a wider range of different ideas. Having diversity also influences community understanding. So when you have a diverse team, your company might actually gain a better understanding of the customer and their client, because you might have someone that relates better to that client or the community that they're working on and looking for. All of this will always lead to employee engagement. So if an employee feels included and accepted in the office, they will be more engaged and motivated to do well and to speak up. So that becomes better performance, better projects, and it's a win-win for everyone. All of this will lead to the reduced employee turnover. So companies with a more diverse workforce will retain employees for longer because employees that feel accepted will be much likely less to leave. So with that said, understanding diversity helps us develop a better workplace cultures. They help employees develop empathy, and with bigger empathy, we understand why people work the way they work, which in turn leads to better project performance and team efforts. With this one, we wrap up the 3 values: mentorship, flexibility, and diversity, and how they can create better workplaces to attract and retain emerging professionals. And Molly will wrap up a little bit about that.
Yes. Ooh. While we hope that what we shared with you today will be helpful as you develop your workplace and what it will look like moving forward, especially when it comes to mentorship, flexibility, and diversity, we do want to point out that the work is far from over. The workplace and workplace design is a continually fluid experiment. The pandemic has greatly increased the flow of change in which we've been pushed into an entirely new territory. Raquel and my hope is that you will continue to evaluate what is good for your organization and those working within it. We do both plan to continue our research and understanding how emerging professionals in the profession of architecture can continue to succeed and excel as professionals. So we want to thank you all for listening to Creating the Future of Work. At this time, we would like to open it up for audience questions. We are very lucky to have one of our structural engineers from Smith Group, Sean Waddell, with us today to help moderate your questions. So Sean, will you take over for us?
Good afternoon, AIA, Illinois. It's me, I'm Sean Waddell. I'm a structural engineer at Smith Group, and I'm so happy to be here with all of you this afternoon. So I didn't see any questions yet in the chat from any of you lucky panelists who get to be here. So I'm gonna start off with a couple. If you have any ideas, if you have anything you wanna mention, even if it's a comment, throw it in the chat, throw it in the QA, but make sure your voice is heard. We got 15 minutes of power hour. So let's really get some engagement going. So I'm gonna start off here. Question for both of you. What is your ideal back to work scenario? We can start with, let's start with Raquel.
Okay, I'll start. So part of my office and why I work at Smith Group is the culture and the people. It's something that I feel that I need every day and that drives me to do better work. So in my ideal future, we will still have a hybrid environment. I nowadays go into the office maybe once a week. that'll grow a little bit. I've been working in Phoenix, not in the Chicago office. So when that happens, I would like to be able to meet with my team. When there's time for collaboration, time for sketching, for coming up with ideas, I want to be there with them. But also selfishly, I want to be there with my coworkers and my friends and be able to have lunch with them. I live by myself, so I don't get that human interaction every day. I do still want to be able to work at home, because what I realized, as being as involved as I am, and Molly and you as well, Sean, sometimes it might take a lot of people coming up to you during the day and you can't focus that much. So being at home allows me for that focus time. It allows me for heads down working. It also helped me with balancing my life a little better. Throughout the past year and a half, I learned on how to put myself first as well. Our job is very important, but our lives too. So I was able to find a balance of working, not being in the office 8 a.m. till 10 p.m., but finding like, I need to make lunch now, I'll stand up or I'll go out for a 15-minute walk. So having that balance is ideal. And I know our office is gonna make that happen. So I'm not that worried.
Molly, go ahead.
I probably would, my ideal would be 3 to 4 days in the office. If you had asked me, say in like May of 2020, what I would have done, I would have been back every day. And I think for me, that was because I really thrive off of socialization. I, like Raquel, also live by myself. So I think that's something that younger people are dealing with maybe more than people who have a family or live in a bigger household. But for me, I find that my desire to work and my motivation go down as I socialize less. So being in the office almost full time for me is really, I think, what's beneficial. I will say, after working from home almost primarily for a year and a half, I have found some things that I really do appreciate working from home. Being able to cook lunch, or to have to be able to change laundry, as my laundry room closes quite early. So I would probably, moving forward, work about 1 day a week and from home. But having the opportunity to kind of pick that day as it fits my schedule would work best for me. I think, Sean, you should answer this question as well.
You know, I think you're right. I agree with Dawn. She's in the chat. She said hybrid was best for her. Hybrid actually works best for me too. If it's a deadline and I'm just grinding, if I have all my markups I need, multiple screens, I'd rather be at the house grinding, because it's easier to get stuff done when you're in like a nice t-shirt and some fuzzy sweatpants, rather than being in work attire. So you can just kind of grind out. And at the end of the day, if it's a late hour, if it's like 7, 8, 9, I've seen 11 before. I'm not gonna lie to you, that work-life balance is hard. It's easier sometimes to be able to switch off when you're at home instantly, rather than, you know, for me, I have a 50-minute door-to-door commute. So after the elevator from my office to my house is 50 minutes. That can be pretty rough, especially on the brain, that commute time, especially after those moments. But if it's those days where I am in the office, I get to have my name drop. My boss Marty, I get to have him near me, so like sometimes it's easier for me to get with him, and he can point to a screen and tell me what I need to learn. I'm still young, I'm still emerging professional, I still need to gain all this knowledge. So it's great having him beside me, because those same conversations that take 5 minutes in the office, it's about 2 hours and 30 minutes when we're at home collaborating over your local team's pings. So that can be a little bit and we all know we all know what it sounds like. You're probably right now in this call hearing the ping ping, you know, that's ridiculous, but that's the life we live in. So I'm gonna switch gears. I'm gonna ask another question. This is for both of you as well. Oh, you know what, Dawn actually posted something. She said that you mentioned, I'm going to answer this live. She said you mentioned amenities people only get at the office draw people into the office. What amenities would be most meaningful to you? So I'm opening up for both of you. Everyone wants to go first.
Start. I think for me, collaboration is going to be very important moving forward. Like Raquel and I both kind of mentioned, focus work doesn't really need to be done in the office. It makes a lot of sense to do it at home where you're not being distracted. You can sit on your sofa if that's more comfortable for you. You can sit at a desk, whatever is your most comfortable environment. But I think the thing that we are all missing the most is collaboration. So having a space with a whiteboard or places to stick up sticky notes, or to get out a roller trace and really to get tactile with how you're working with each other. That's what people are looking for. I know in our office specifically, we were running out of conference rooms before the pandemic. So I can imagine as we go back, if all of us are in here, we are going to need those conference rooms. So providing places where your employees can collaborate is going to be really important. And I think one thing we need to think about as well is some people will feel a little uncomfortable being in a small and enclosed space. So having larger, more open spaces where employees collaborate is going to be really important. So maybe your cafe, you get some training tables or some other sort of furniture that makes it a little bit more flexible so people can have maybe a charrette in there, but then it can still function as a cafe. And that's a larger space where a smaller, a bigger group can maybe get together without feeling like they're on top of each other or like breathing each other's air. Because I think some people will still have a little bit of fear coming into the office. So giving them adequate space to make sure they feel comfortable while they're collaborating. But collaboration spaces definitely are going to be the most important space, I think.
I would agree with you, Molly, completely. And then when you say collaboration spaces, I'm going to say space in general. And this is based on my personal experience, but right now I have a small laptop, which I've gotten very well at only using one screen, and my living room table, dining room table. That's where I work every day. So the benefit of the office is actually having space to work. In the office, I have a big desk with a return, and the person sitting next to me can turn around and we can collaborate right away. It's just a perfect place for collaboration. I get my 2 screens in the office. So I work a lot doing renders on Enscape or Revit. I would say that I'm much faster when I'm able to have the render in another screen and I'm working in one screen. So having those technical amenities, or we have a resource area in our office, the printing and all the printers, being able to print something real quick and sketch over it rather than trying to sketch over my screen is always a good benefit. Or even Molly and I, we use the resource library a lot for materials. My house became, it's mostly materials right now, and my living room is all these interior materials that they don't look that great in my house. So it's actually nice to be able to bring that all in the office again, and having our resource materials library center when we can lay it all out and lay it all in a table. So there's definitely a lot of amenities that we wouldn't necessarily have at home unless we invest on them, that I think are great for having in the office. And yeah.
I think people will start to see too that having some separation, like Raquel said, both of us have materials over our entire apartments, and we both live in small Chicago apartments. So there's not a second bedroom that we're putting them in and closing the door. They're very much a part of our workspace. And I work on a small table in my living room. So I feel sometimes like I'm sitting in my living room, and then I will, sit and watch TV at night, or sit and have a Zoom call with friends or family. Like, there's so much monotony that having that second space if you feel comfortable and feel safe in, that will separate your work life and give you that work life balance, but also it not be in the same space.
Yeah, for all the joy of working from home, wherever joy that is, and also working in the office, that transition space really helps separate the work and the life and the work-life balance. That little dash mark that you see whenever someone writes it out in a lovely email. But I want to highlight something from Dave in the chat. He told us to look at Deep Work. That's for everybody. He told us to look at Deep Work by Cal Newport. That's another good way of finding time by using your time for very focused and creative work away from distractions. So it's a book. We're architects. We love books. We're trying to get licensed here. So we all probably have read a book and love it. So Deep Work by Cal Newport. Another question, I'm gonna try to get 2 off before it's 2:30 deadline. If you have anything else, please ask it in the Q&A section or put it in the chat. We just want to be engaged with you. We just want to get to know who you are. So I'm going to ask this next question. Raquel and I always talk about mental health. We've always chatted about that between our teams chats when we see each other in person. I want to ask both of you, how have you dealt with burnout and working late? And also a fun word that we're going to say, boundaries.
Boundaries. I'll start with that one, Sean, because we do talk about it a lot, and I talk about it with Molly all the time. And I'm going to try to phrase this in the way that not only for people that will have hybrid environments in the future, because some of us work at smaller firms that are always going to remain going into work every day. But a big thing that I found out about boundaries was that I was able to prove to teams and to my projects, because we had to go virtual, that work can be done at home. Before the pandemic, I would stay working till 1 a.m. or 10 p.m. in the office because everyone was there. And I felt like, well, I have to be here because people are here. After that, we proved that, well, maybe you're still in the office all day, but if you have a deadline, it's 5:30, you go home, you take care of your kids or you have dinner, and then you log on again and your team can still be connected, but virtually. It doesn't always have to be in person. As long as you prove people that the job can be done, it will get done. And with burnout, the same thing. Surprisingly, with the whole virtual world, as I said, I started taking care of myself and understanding that we do need time to breathe. We all need to go take a walk outside once in a while, breath of fresh air. But cooking for ourselves, this might sound crazy, but sometimes when you work late in the office, all we order is bad food that's not healthy and conductive for our mental health. So now we have time to do that. So take that advantage and do it, because mental health is important. You're gonna burn out, and when you burn out, you're not gonna be as efficient, and the office is not gonna be happy. You're not gonna be happy, and that's why then you might want to leave your workspace. When all of us, I think, are in the same boat now, and we're all trying to figure out what's the best way to work in our careers, which we know is a beautiful but intense career, and manage to have a life outside of it. So yeah.
I suffered from burnout really bad over the summer. I was on 3 projects that were all kind of in that construction administration phase. And so I was working on those things kind of all by myself. And that made things pretty difficult, just because, again, I live alone. I don't get a lot of socialization out of work during my work week. And then when I was working, I wasn't designing with anyone. I wasn't talking with anyone on the day-to-day. So outside of like an OAC meeting, I didn't really get to talk to anyone. And I found that that was really, really hard on my mental health, and made it really hard to want to log on. So to kind of combat that, I communicated that with my leadership. And I think that's something that's really effective for emerging professionals and anyone to do, is communicate with your leadership what you need, because they want you to be the most productive you can be. And if you're burnt out, you're not being productive. So communicate that with your leadership. Another thing that I found really helpful is I would find somebody in my day, and if there was something that was frustrating me, even if I didn't need help fixing it, but just like message someone on Teams or be like, hey, can I talk to you for 5 minutes? And just be like, this is frustrating me and I just need to tell somebody, and let them know that I don't need you to help me. I just need you to know that I have this on my plate and I'm having a hard time. So I think that being honest and communicating that, finding a buddy at work, it could be your mom, it could be a friend outside of work, but just telling somebody that like, I'm frustrated can be really, really powerful, even if you know that they're not going to be helping you. You're just telling them, I need somebody to know that I'm frustrated.
And Molly, you said something interesting where you're saying like, tell your leadership what you need. I want to reiterate that, because not only about burnout, this is about anything that has to do with work, because you're at a job to grow as an architect. Speak up, because you were hired because you're good at what you do. You deserve every opportunity at your job. Your voice matters. So if you have an idea, bring it to the table. I know it's a little bit scary when you're first starting, but your ideas matter. So don't be afraid to speak, and look for the people that are going to be there to advocate for you. And if they're not there, maybe you're not in the right place. So always remember that.
Thank you, both of you. Mental health, very important. I'm a big advocate for it. So if you need help, if you need something, if you feel something, even professionally, you can professionally say how you feel. Don't be afraid to talk about it. You got coworkers, you got friends in the office. If you don't got friends in the office, time to make some. Trust me, you need them. So I just got the 2-minute warning. Man, this has been a great session. I'm gonna leave it with this. So we got like a good minute and a half. Both of you, 30 seconds. Give it to me quick. And if you could go back, it's you're both like older professionals now. You're still emerging professionals, but you've been in the game for a minute. Now, what would you tell that younger self? What did your younger self not get that you wish they got? Give it to me quick.
I would say two things. One, kind of back to my other thing, advocate for yourself. I didn't really do that early on in my career. I was like, I want to learn everything and I just want to like see what's given to me, which I think is a really, really important thing. And it really helped me excel in my career because I was open to taking on anything. But then I kind of got to a point where I was like, well, why are they getting this opportunity and why are they getting this opportunity? Well, it's because they were asking for it. So sometimes you just have to say like, hey, I'm really interested in that project you were talking about, or hi, I heard that the firm just won this project. Is there any way I could work on that? Even if your management can't put you on that project when you ask for it, at least they know that you're thinking about it, and that opens a conversation. Because at the end of the day, your employer wants you to be happy in your role, so ask for it. That's the biggest thing that I not regret, but wish I had done sooner.
Thank you, Molly. Raquel.
I'll break it down in three things. I already said one, it's speak up. Don't forget that. Two, love what you do and where you work. You're at your job more than 8 hours a day, sometimes 10 and 12. If you don't love it, you're just ruining your life. So make sure that you love what you're doing, the projects you're working on, and love the people that you're working with. Yes, sometimes your relationships are just as coworkers, but make sure you get along even as a coworker relationship. And then lastly, I have to think a little bit about this one, but it's we're all leaders, and we've said it before, and we just said we're all emerging leaders, emerging professionals. No matter what point in your life you are right now, you have led something or you're leading something, whether it was at school, whether it was a baseball game or a committee or a project. You're all in that role, so never feel like what you're saying doesn't matter because you're leading someone. And now that you know that you're leading someone, know that you're very responsible. You're responsible for someone else's growth. And that's back to what we were all saying. We are all key to making our offices successful. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all. We're at the 3:30 mark. We've done it. We've made it on time. We appreciate everyone for being here, but also in the chat with your little hands, with the react button. Give a hand clap to both Raquel and Molly. They did a great job today. If there are things that you've done or things you've heard, reach out to both of them on LinkedIn. They're available. Message them. If you have any questions about emerging professionals, if you heard something that you really like, implement it. You guys are amazing. Everyone here is an amazing designer. If no one told you already, be great, be well, have a fantastic day. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.